apologize for the very slow delay. We happened to all show up into the same room and had a lot of feedback and have been working that issue out. We are so happy to have our Vice Chair Kelly with us today. He was not able to be here last time. And so as we all introduced ourselves in a unique way or told something unique about us, he's said he's willing to take a couple of sentences to do that this morning. So go ahead, Vice Chair Kelly.
A couple of sentences. I don't know if I can do that. So I'm seeing mute here, but I'm good there, right? So you guys
you're good up
there, right? I'll share with you something very embarrassing, and you just can't hold this against me. This is now going to be for the world to see because this is being recorded, right?
Right.
I mean,
yes.
But my two front teeth are false, and they come out, so I can take them out.
Oh my goodness!
And let everybody see my two missing front teeth. All right, but. That was a wrestling accident. I shot in on a guy and my mouth hit his knee. They didn't fall out, but it hit him hard enough the roots started to die. And I've always just had this little partial in there, so that's my partial. You know.
Oh my word.
So,
sports.
Yeah,
I love sports.
Yeah. So
wow. When I
so
said tell us something nobody knows.
Now I've revealed to the world.
You really
my students every once in a while I'll do that and they but yeah, now it's on film for the world to see.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
You took that very seriously when we said tell us something that we don't know about you already. That was really great.
Now you know.
Well, we're so glad. And I know we'd like to excuse Deputy Superintendent Jones. I know that he's out at the Capitol doing PEA, but we're going to invite Deputy Superintendent Jones to invite a couple of his more staff next time to do the same thing that Vice Chair Kelly just did. And as we make our way through, each of our board members and staff will get everybody in at some point. Let's go ahead and start. Cami, did we have anyone sign up for public input today?
There's no public comment.
We can't hear you, Cami.
There is no public comment. No.
I wonder if that's on our end.
As I say, I can hear her.
So this is the
Is that
mute
just a
button.
speaker or is it a mic?
Can you
It's a
hear me
speaker
now?
too.
We're hearing
And it
her
was
out here in
We're not hearing Randy either.
Zoom.
So Randy talking.
Randy, we're not hearing you either. Can you talk to us for a minute, Randy?
Hello, hi. I'm speaking right now. Can you hear me?
Okay. Just hang tight for a minute. We're trying to make it so we can hear you.
How about now?
Hello. This is Randy Booth.
He's still talking and we can't hear him.
I'm
So
speaking.
this goes to the TV.
Happy to be here this morning.
So maybe the TV.
I can hear Tammy. I can hear all of you.
Here comes our expert.
Are these just dummies? I feel like I'm a dummy.
Hello.
Did we just hear Randy?
No, that was
This is Randy right
Oh, that was
here.
Jerry.
Sorry.
I swear we heard him before, didn't we?
I thought we did,
This
yes.
is controlling that.
Hello, I'm speaking right now. Can you hear me? Hello.
You know what? We may have to quickly go into different offices.
You guys ever seen Zoolander?
That's what I'm thinking.
I'm gonna mute this just for a second.
Can you hear us, Jerry?
Hello, this is Randy. I'm still trying to be heard.
We can hear you, Randy.
I know.
But
I can hear all the staff. I don't know why
yeah, exactly.
the others are not hearing.
They've got us on mute right now, though, on the table. So so that we
Alright.
can't hear them right now while they're trying to fix it.
Great. Thank you.
This is the one difficulty we face with the smaller conference rooms. And so,
So, I apologize. We are quickly going into different rooms so that we can be functional. And, just need to see who's still here. Do we have everyone? And did member Hymus get set up? Let's go ahead and start. Looks like we have most of us here. Let's go ahead and start with R277-113 LEA Fiscal and Auditing Policies Amendment. Deborah, thank you for covering for Deputy Superintendent Jones. I'm going to turn the time over to you to tell us who's addressing us on this one.
Or if we can, if we can excuse Ben Rasmussen, he's in another committee. So if we can recognize Director Sam Uri, and he can give the details and background on this rule.
Yes, Director Uri, thank you so much.
Good morning, School Finance Director Sam Uri. So R277-113, if you recall, the legislature created the LEA Fiscal Flexibility Program during and as a result of COVID. Over the course of a few years, there have been some updates and changes. The COVID language was removed from the statute, and any reference to, responding to those sorts of flexible student needs, and it was kind of made permanent. But the statute was going to sunset starting July 1, 2024. In the special session over the summer, the legislature removed that sunset. We had proactively removed this section of language referring to the fiscal flexibility session in anticipation of that sunset. It wasn't sunset, so we put it back. But when we put that same language that had existed prior in rule back, we just had some technical updates to make, mostly so that we remove kind of that reference to the COVID years, and just clean it up and make it easier for LEAs to understand. We had a couple of LEAs reach out and say, hey, this piece maybe is a little bit concerning, or just needs some adjusting for clarity. So if we can go to the highlighted language here, I believe it's down section. Sorry. So that's really the impetus for the update. It removes that reference to flexible student needs that was there originally in statute, and just establishes the expectations for LAs going forward when they do opt to use the flexible fiscal flexibility program, which, as a reminder to maybe new members of the committee or the public, is the ability for LEAs to take 35% of their yearly allocation of a restricted state program and flexibly use that for other educational purposes as they see fit. Sorry, Kim, I think it's in section 9, all the way down. Oh, my apologies. It's 11, sorry. This is extensive rule, but here we go. So just some, again, technical changes. You'll see there that the section 2 that says changing circumstances and student needs is removed. That language was removed from statute, and just clarifies this section. So happy to answer any questions. John Palmer, our school finance financial reporting manager, is here as well to answer questions. So
is this the only change we're looking at? 522 to 526?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, I have a question that's adjacent, but board members, do you have questions? Also, I've got to change my screen so I can see you. Jump in for now if you've got a question, because I've got to change my screen. Just got a new laptop, so I'm figuring it out. Two different laptops, actually.
I have a motion whenever you're ready.
Okay,
Chair.
I have a question. Just oh, well, you did pop up when you raised your hand. So can you tell us, Director Yuri, this is a question that's been circling around for years. Do we have to use contra revenue accounting to meet GAAP standards, or can GAAP standards be met in a different way? And or the requirements of Utah state statute? Or is that a bigger question for next time?
In the context, Chair, if I may, in the context of this rule, it wouldn't necessarily, or this rule change, it wouldn't necessarily apply here. I believe you're mostly referring to contra revenue accounts, as it would refer to recording fee waivers and things of that nature. That is my understanding, is that's the most appropriate way under generally accepted accounting principles. The acronym is shortened to GAAP, but it is something that we could explore potentially doing it in a different way, at a later date. I would think it would be something that we would, it might be part of our chart of accounts work group that is ongoing, that we could explore certain options that may work better for LEAs. But I guess for this particular rule change, it's not quite as applicable, but definitely could be part of ongoing discussions or changes.
This is the rule that requires it, right?
Yes, it's in a different section of the rule.
Yeah. Okay. So we can revisit that and again on another day, I think. Thank you. Member Booth.
I would move that we approve the changes to R277113 and draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
I second that.
Is there discussion to this motion, Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
So I recognize that I am late to the party. My computer is still booting up. You'll see I'm on my phone here. I should have stayed in the room with Christina and Cole, who had everything figured out, but I didn't. Can I be reminded, is this the fiscal flexibility that came forward from Senator Fillmore?
Yes.
Is this that? And then there was a recommendation on some verbiage change, and I'm looking through the rule of the new wording. Can I be reminded on what lines those were?
Yes, can we put that screen back up, please? Lines 522, I think it was.
And I don't mean to disrupt the motion. I'm just trying to make sure I'm filled in.
Sure, we want you to know what you're voting on. It's
Thank you.
522 to 526.
Okay, let me see here. You just got a new computer. Mine is,
You have the opposite problem.
yes. So 522. There we go.
It should be shared on the screen there.
Well, I'm on my phone, so I'm trying to get it on my
Oh,
eyes are not as good as they used to be.
do you want me to read it to you?
No, I see it now. I've got it up here. So, and then I know you spoke to this, just summary, Chair. If you could summarize for me again, I apologize. I had missed out. Summarize what removing this does. It offers more flexibility, right? When I say more flexibility, and maybe this is directed to Sam, does this offer the flexibility that legislature was intending to have, but that the rule before the amendment does not allow for? Chair, through you or to you.
I'm happy to answer that.
Please do.
So, yeah, Chair Hymas, I think unintentionally lines, so lines 522 and 523 really mostly remove the reference to COVID, which was kind of the impetus for this program being put in place. But 524, 525, 526, I think we're unintentionally, uh, kind of having some LEAs wonder about the way that they made these transfers. Our feeling is that once they do unrestrict that 35% of the available funds in a state restricted program, they've gone ahead and activated that flexibility, and there's no need for this additional language. It's really just been confusing, and LEAs rightfully so are trying to follow statute and trying to follow rule, but we felt like it was just additional language that was confusing, and the existing statute really lays out the guidelines very well. So,
Okay. And this, so I just was able to pull up an email from December 10th, and this actually does help. To your answer helps, and this email helps, and this striking of the language helps. This is a win-win-win, as Michael Scott would call it. So let's, that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hymas. So does an LEA, do they have to encumber it? If it says they don't have to return it if it's not spent, so they don't have to spend it in the fiscal year, does it need to be encumbered?
so depending on, and John Palmer can chime in here if there's anything to clarify, but depending on where they transfer this to, they may transfer it to one of the more general K-12 sorts of programs. If they're not transferring it to another restricted program, then it becomes more general, and they're able to, for example, supplement teacher salaries or some supplies in a program. And that's the reason for removing that language is once you put it in one of the more general program codes, it becomes very difficult to then track that. It by its nature, if you do so, let's say, for example, you're unrestricting some state special education funds. We use the program 1205. If you put that into 005, which is our very general regular basic school program, it's very hard to track that. If you put it into another restricted program, it becomes very, it's easy to track. So with that removal of this language, it allows those more general transfers, which is the intent of the the statute. And so it just gives clarity to the LEAs on doing that.
Thank you. That's helpful. Seeing no other hands, and if I ever miss a hand, please members just speak up and tell me to stop. But seeing no other hands now, we have a motion on the board that the committee approves R277-113 LEA Fiscal and Auditing Policies Draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Members, please vote.
I'm gonna vote yes because I can't, I'm not gonna struggle to find my hand yet. I'll get there.
Okay. I cannot see member Bogus. Oh, there she is. Okay. So got everyone on different screens. Member Kelly or Vice Chair Kelly? Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you.
Sorry, I was figuring out how to vote on my on the chat. So I got that now. I got a
Oh,
yes.
okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you. Also, just by way of so everybody's on the same page on for our committee meetings, we don't need a second. We just need someone to make the motion. Then in the big well, actually, when we report out, we also don't need a second. But in
Okay.
other ones we do.
But I was happy to second that,
Hey,
Randy.
I'm so glad. It was good to know we had your support there. Okay, let's move on to 3.3. Deborah, who's going? Oh, looks like Win Shooter and Aaron Broff are going to our research consultant and our director of data.
It'll be Winshare.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, how are you? It's nice to see you.
Likewise, bringing these 5 research questions. We provide these annually to the Utah Data Research Center. I think you have those in your materials. We have these organized as 5 main general questions, and then the sub-questions are examples of specific research questions that researchers might consider using to answer the larger question above.
And these are questions that board members have generated and seen in the past, right? Or some of these are new.
These questions, the first 4 came from our Center of Excellence here in the agency, and the 5th was a late addition brought to us by a few board members.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm happy to answer questions about the UDRC and or discuss these questions.
Great. Thank you. And right before I go to member Bogus, I just want to remind members that the UDRC is funded through state funds, and the rules are that 2 agencies in the state have to combine together. 2 agencies have to be able to benefit from the research. So I think that's how you best describe it. Member Bogus. We can't hear you. And now we can't hear.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. So I come up as Cole. I just looked at these and there's no red lines or green lines. And so I'm wondering, they both say 2025. And I believe it was just stated that one was from last year. But I just would like to know the fundamental difference between the 2 documents, because I don't see like a tracked change. Are you understanding what I'm articulating?
Yes, and the reason that there aren't any red lines for changes is because these are new this year. So if someone can remind me, I know I've done this in years past, forgive my brain. Do we prioritize these like we prioritize audits and number them? Or is this simply we approve that all of these can go to the full board for consideration, and then the board can choose which to move to the top?
Correct, the latter.
Okay, so we just need to see if we want to forward these to the board or not.
Correct.
And also, I would think our committee can forward like 4 out of the 5 or something like that. Could we do that, or is it a straight up or down? We're going to forward them or we're not?
You can choose as you like. Every year
I
we
thought.
provide these questions. You can look at an archive of the questions we've provided on the UDR website, and you can look at research that they've done in the past there as well. I'll pop the link in the chat.
And these have all been vetted to make sure that they benefit two agencies, so they would qualify for that funding, correct?
Correct.
Thank you so much. Member Bogus.
So Chair, I'm just confused as to how they differ. Because I'm looking at the documents side by side and they just appear to be the same. And maybe
There's
I
only
am
one document.
missing something.
Are you looking at it in two different places, or are you referring to each number seems the same to you? Because there's only
So-
one document. It's a two-page document.
I have two documents in my backup, one with a date in January and one with a date in February, and they appear to be the same.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And I just don't know how they are different, because if they are different, then I would love to know the differences before we start moving.
Special Shooter, do you want to address that?
Absolutely, I'm happy to clear that up. We submitted 4 questions, and then just in the last few days, we're asked about a 5th question related to math. And so we've added a 5th question to the most recent.
I see it now. So would it be fair to say that the first page is absolutely identical and all we're adding in that second document is the 5th question?
That's my understanding, yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, I got so stuck on comparing the first page that I didn't get all the way to the second. So I apologize. That answers my question, ma'am. I'm good to go.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other hands? Seeing no other hands. Well, I still see Member Bogus, but I think it might be from the one.
Yes, so please forgive me because I'm using his mic. My hand doesn't go down automatically in Zoom.
Oh, got it. Okay. So do we
I
have
got a hand up.
Chair Hymas?
Thank you. So, or unless we're continuing going on, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get back on base here, Chair. These 5 questions, these are research questions for the UDRC, and we want to take these, we want to either amend or pass them through this committee and then take them to the full board. And did we already discuss how these are going to help the UDRC? Did Wayne already, Wayne, I don't want you to repeat yourself. I will listen to it online if I need to.
Yeah, they won't help the UDRC, but they have to get the funds to do the studies, it has to benefit 2 different agencies in the state.
Well, I guess my question is,
You could tell us which 2 agencies, which agency aside from us it's going to benefit.
well, if I could, Chair, I'm less concerned about which agencies it's going to benefit. How's this going to benefit our students, Win? Can we answer that through the chair? Like everything we do, I'm trying to say, okay, I'm really academically focused here. How is this going to benefit our students? Is that a question for right now, Chair, or is that a later question?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it kind of stems from the conversations we've had in this committee leading up to the ROI and the return on investment and what are we actually getting for some of these programs that we have questions about. But I'll also let Wynn address that too. Specialist Shooter, do you want to address that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you look at each of these 5 questions, forget about the sub questions, which are essentially examples of things that might help inform the first question. Let's take the first one, for example. How do post-secondary education and workforce outcomes differ between early high school graduates and traditional high school graduates? So this would ultimately inform the question of the value of early high school graduation versus traditional high school graduation. So if we find that there are benefits above and beyond traditional high school graduation and that early graduates are favored in these future outcomes, then perhaps that might influence some future policy decisions. And you could apply that same logic to each of these questions by reading the question and then considering what policies you might want to address as a result of what we learned from having these questions answered.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate that, Win, and the way you framed that is very helpful. Let me ask on number 2, do we need more data on CTE? That sounds awful. For somebody who collects data, I can hear Christina in her silence, getting frustrated. But does this data I mean,
We're on mute over here.
what are post-secondary education workforce outcomes of CTE program participation? And I think most people would just say their outcomes are amazing, right? Let's move on. Or you know what I mean? Like what are we hoping to do with this data that we have that we don't already know?
Happy to noodle
Please.
on that with you if you like.
Please.
Well, I'm not super familiar with the CTE program specifically, but I understand that there are different pathways, like you have concentrators or completers. By looking at those differences and comparing them to non-participants, again, we might learn that post-secondary outcomes are particularly strong for those who completed CTE programs versus those who were only, or concentrators. I'm not sure which one is more robust. But those are the type of things that you can answer and the way that this might inform policy to understand post-secondary and workforce outcomes as they're related to an intervention, in this case, CTE program participation, and being able to compare that to non-participants. This is really the value of what the UDRC offers, the fact that we have this longitudinal data from multiple agencies.
Chair.
Please.
I'm just looking through all of these, and of course, each of us are going to look at these and be like, "Oh, I know the answer to that." Including myself, like, "Oh, I can get." You don't need to ask them when, just come talk to me, right? That kind of.
Many scientific questions work that way, don't they? We're confirming what we think we already know.
Yeah. So this number 5, and I truly appreciate this document here, and I think it's very helpful. And I appreciate the data we're trying to receive to get better answers so that we can clearly go to policymakers and say, here's the data. This is not anecdotal, this is the data. So let me jump to number 5 if I could. It says, what is the relationship of high school math course taking patterns and academic performance on higher education retention and academic outcomes? Are we essentially looking at, so we've gone into, what is it called, when that we've gone away from our algebra and pre-algebra and algebra 2 geometry. We've got, what is that called? There's integrated math. Thank you. Is that what we're looking at here? How does integrated math prepare for college compared to, is it called segregated math? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the typical classic word is, but what are you looking for specifically here?
Well, we've not worked the integrated math language into these question examples, but we certainly could. At this point, the question 5 is quite general about understanding the relationship of those math course taking patterns and those secondary and workforce outcomes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, higher ed outcomes.
So this is all part of the process. And I again, I appreciate that. I mean, you have like in your subset questions, right? English special education, English learners. So I don't know if you're looking at the math curriculum, the math standards, the math design, the math outcome, the individuals who's taking the math, maybe all, right? I guess we're just kind of early in this process.
Yeah, thanks for those questions. Those will be great things to specify, and we could certainly pull over and get into some of those details and add some sub questions to this. I understand that math is often considered a gateway class for success in college. So being able to link students' high school experience with math and their experience at a university level and how their success in math may or may not have been related to their overall success in a higher education experience, I think promises to have a lot of value.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's just a lot of anecdotal conversation all the time about with higher ed and K-12 and math, and I think some of these answers, particularly like C with the advanced coursework, I think are interesting. Member Kelly, Vice Chair Kelly.
Yeah, I apologize for not knowing the title of Mr. Shooter, so but I appreciate your helping me understand this just a little bit better. I'm trying to understand if you don't mind, as a new board member, I just want to try to gain a better understanding of how this data is compiled. You're using data from workforce services and then comparing that to data from USBE. Can you expand on that? Is that accurate?
Board Member Davis, would you like
Yes,
me to answer?
please. Thank
Yep.
you, Specialist Shooter.
Sure, we're not doing the work here. These are questions that we give annually to the Utah Data Research Center, who uses the state longitudinal data system to answer these questions. Within the state longitudinal data system is a multi-agency database, if you will, that includes the Department of Commerce, the Department of Health, the Department of Workforce Services, Systems of Higher Ed, and also us, the State Board of Education, and a few others. So this is a state level initiative that we're participants in.
How are they able to reconcile? I feel like a student data is fairly well protected, or at least I hope it is. How are they connecting professional workforce, the labor market, to students that were in our system?
That's a technical question that we would have to bring in someone from the UDRC to answer if you're asking about the technical aspects of the data exchange. Katie Chalice perhaps wants to weigh in on that.
Director Chalice.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll speak. I think I understood your question, Vice Chair Kelly, to be one of appropriateness. Is that whether it's appropriate to connect those data sets? Is that accurate?
Yeah, or just the methodology of how they're connecting it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll agree with Dr. Shooter that I cannot speak to the technicality of it, but I'll just briefly inform the committee of the legal assessment of it. So under FERPA, to your point about student data being protected, FERPA allows for data disclosure to another agency if it is for certain purposes. And one of those purposes is for audit and evaluation. So that's the justification that allows USBE to share data with UDRC. And then I'll just note that they are not permitted to further disclose the data outside of their organization. What they are allowed to do is use it to make determinations, to conduct research as being discussed here, and then share publications about that research externally. Also, I realize that does not answer your technical question, but that's the message about like the appropriateness or the legality of it.
Thank you. Appreciate the answer.
Would it be possible, if these move forward to the board for consideration, because we're not approving these today, we're just determining if the board can consider them, that we can get a little bit more information about methodology on that as well?
Absolutely. It should be a pretty straightforward question to answer. Basically, I believe once these data are ingested into the state longitudinal data system, there's a new identifier created that allows all the students to be linked within their system. But like I say, Jeremiah Solari or someone else from the UDRC perhaps might want to visit us, or perhaps Aaron could give more detailed questions on that. But this, I believe the UDRC dates back to 2011 and the most recent iteration of it to 2017. So these data have been shared as part of this group for quite a long time.
Right. As kind of an extension of state agency. Member Booth?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move that we approve the UDRC research agenda. And the formal motion would be that the committee forward the presented research questions to the full board for approval as USBE research priority for the UDRC research agenda.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion on the floor that the committee forward the presented research questions to the full board for approval as USBE research priority for the UDRC research agenda. Member Bogus.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I do appreciate it. Without objection, I would love to, or with the will of the committee, to amend the motion to say for review and possible approval as USBE's research priority.
Sure, without objection, committee, is there any objection to changing the motion to say that the committee forward the presented research questions to the full board for review and possible approval as USBE research priority for the UDRC research agenda?
Great.
All right, seeing no objection, members, please vote. That passes unanimously. And thank you, members. We are on to 3.4, and it looks like we have Director of School Improvement, Sarah Wibke, to talk with us about federal school improvement waiver considerations.
Yes, good morning. Sarah Wibke, Director of School Improvement. As requested, we put together a response to the committee's request in the backup documentation. Upon reviewing all of the waivers that have been submitted to the U.S. Department of Education, there were 4 that were specific to school improvement, other than the ones that all came during 2021 when we had the COVID-19 pandemic, or related to specific natural disasters. So within those 4, we included those in the table. So if you scroll down to whoever is controlling the screen, and thank you for your support in this, scroll down, you can see all 4 of those waivers. One of them was specific to a request for waiving school improvement for a school because the building had a fire, and that waiver was denied. The other 3 were more around either extending support, extending funding, or extending the duration of the grants for school improvement. So they sort of went in the other direction. And then further down the document past the table, we included some of those potential unintended consequences as requested, and many of those are really around funding and support. We look forward to hearing the committee's recommendation on how to proceed and have provided some potential options at the end of the document for you to consider, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Can you scroll back up a little? Can we look at page 5 for just a minute? Is that page 5?
It's up. It needs to go
One
up.
just above that.
We're on 6 now, maybe.
Okay, let's look at the recommendations on how to proceed. So these are our choices, basically based on the research of what we found that other states have been doing with waivers with the federal government. Is that correct?
That's I think these are really just potential options for the committee to look over. Of course, you're welcome to bring other options to the table as you see fit.
Sure. Would you be willing to summarize those 3 bullets? We're kind of scanning through them, but just for the public too, can you just quickly summarize those for us?
Absolutely. So the first bullet is really around a discontinuation of participation, which is slightly different than a waiver, to the Board of Education. And so this would require additional discussion around budget and interruption to services to those hundreds of schools that we're supporting within this space. And so that process would be to discontinue accepting funding. It may also have some secondary effects, including our eligibility for other federal education funding, since we are tied very closely in school improvement with Title I and also accountability. Another option, the second bullet there, is really writing a waiver request to the Department of Ed for federal school improvement. It would require us to go through a sort of lengthy process to document that request, seek public comment, pursue support from our governor, that type of thing prior to submitting. So it wouldn't be, we don't want you to think it was an overnight situation. And then that last one is really just to continue moving forward with what we are doing at this time, which is providing school improvement support, federal and state, of course, And so it is sort of tied to the request that you all made on a different but adjacent committee item where we were talking about the ROI, the return on investment for school improvement specifically, where you all actually already decided to move forward. And you can see in those sub-bullets some of the requests that you all made for staff to move forward to. So you have already tasked us to move in that direction, but I wanted to add that as just kind of a reminder since it is an adjacent agenda item, not specifically this one.
I'm sorry, I've got members all over and I don't see any hands right now, so I'm gonna ask a question. The reason we're doing this really is because there's some duplicative reporting from the LEAs, correct? Between our turnaround, our Elevate Springboard and our statewide and our CSI schools federally, and then you've got other school improvement plans and such. So would the waiver be to not necessarily waive the money we're receiving, but to ask that we can combine some of these reporting requirements? Is that correct? So we don't have to do so much extra.
Sure. I'm not sure I can speak to previous board chair Moss's desire as to sort of why he wanted to go in this direction. What I can say is the additional reporting requirements that we have are actually in state code. They're not in federal code. And those extra reporting requirements or just requirements in general are put onto federal school improvement via our state code.
So the state code subsumes the federal requirements, not the other way around. The extra requirements aren't coming from the federal. They're all required in state plus more.
Correct.
Because I thought that was why he wanted this on in the first place. Remember?
Yeah, I'm unsure.
Okay, Chair Hymas.
Thank you. So I think you and Christina have a pretty sound context here, but I don't have one, and maybe Cole has been filled in and Randy, but we as a committee sought a waiver request from the federal government for our school improvement program. Is that what I'm reading?
No, we as a committee sought information from staff to take a look at the overlapping parts of the reporting for Elevate and Turnaround, or Springboard, which used to be Turnaround, which is state, and CSI, which is federal, and other school improvement plans required for trust land, for a variety of things. That's where this stemmed from. I have commandeered Deputy Superintendent Jones' office. I thought he was going to be at the Capitol the whole time. He's walked in. He caught me almost about to drink his opened can of Coke on the table, but I'm going to turn my computer to him because he's going to explain this better than I did.
Madam Chair, thank you. Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. If I may, Madam Chair, I just need to clarify something with Sarah. So Sarah, the state requirements though, I think where the disconnect might be right now is that there was maybe a misunderstanding that the state requirements that we impose
We're less than the federal.
were less than the federal, or that the state requirements are, when we get the required reporting or data or things, that does get used to meet other reporting requirements by the federal government. Can I clarify that? Is that not correct, Sarah, or?
That's a really good clarification. So all of the reporting that we're talking about is tied to accountability. It's not tied to school improvement. So that may be part of the disconnect in this space.
Yes.
School improvement is specifically providing funding to our schools that are in need, and then providing support and meeting them where their needs are at. And so that's really the school improvement piece. The accountability is collecting, like, for example, the assessment data. The only piece that we collect as far as what you could consider data would be the school improvement plan. And that is actually required also in state code. So that's not an on top of, it's a with, if you will. So it's required in federal and state code, not twice.
May I continue, Chair?
Yes.
So Sarah, see, the thing of it is what the interest is, or what started this discussion and this eventual point that we're at right now is to identify, is there particulars within the federal code that could be waived that then would in turn potentially reduce the state requirements to make sure that we're all meeting in the middle, so to speak, right? That there's could be some tie-in. And so I think now that you've clarified that, I do still see that opportunity, right? But what is it precisely that we would want to get waived from the federal government, or to say, you know, from like the federalism standpoint and all these interoperable type processes that are going on right now, new president, you know, that those types of things is. So Sarah, is that feasible too? I think you did articulate that, but I think the intent all along has been to help identify what the federal government is requiring that we could potentially ask to be either waived or reduced, that then ultimately would allow for us to require less reporting or less requirement on the state code part. So Sarah, are we in that realm at all?
So I think I think part of the discussion here is really around the additional burdens that have been placed on our schools that are in federal school improvement. Those additional burdens aren't coming from federal school improvement, they're coming from our state code. And also our board rule. So to be fair, we could, actually, you all have actually tasked us to move forward in removing some of that duplicative, those pieces that are extra and burdensome. So we are already, of course, tasked to do that because you all requested that last month. So we are already moving in that direction.
Can you repeat that one more time? Say that sentence again.
Yeah, absolutely. So last month, this committee requested that we work with staff, meaning like the policy team, to remove additional requirements in board rule and state code that are providing this additional burden onto our schools that have been federally designated under school improvement. And so that's the piece of that additional burden that we are already working toward in the return on investment item that was brought to you last month.
Okay, and I have more questions about the school improvement and accountability piece and how it ties into this, but I have hands, so I'll have others go first. I apologize, I didn't see who went up first because Deputy Jones, we had my computer turn, but Vice Chair Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, the comments have brought up some additional questions for me, so bear with me if you will. But so my understanding is that you're saying that a lot of the school improvement requirements are coming more from the state than the federal government. So it's more of a burden being placed on the schools by our state policy and maybe board rule, and not so much the federal government. And then my other question was just, that's a clarifying question, I would say. But then the other question is, I know this is politically a little bit of a bombshell but we're looking at the potential. There's drafts at the federal government right now to eliminate the Department of Education. How do we see that playing out, and how would that impact this waiver request?
Chair may respond.
Yes.
Great. To answer your first question, yes, you are understanding correctly. As to your second question, I would defer to our superintendency because, of course, that wouldn't only impact my space. And so I think it's probably better answered by others than myself.
Deputy Superintendent Jones is going to take that.
So, Madam Chair, the question that committee member Kelly has asked is that the short answer is it remains to be seen. We can anticipate that whatever decisions are made likely would have effect on multiple programs, including this one and including school improvement. However, I would just caution the public, I would caution the committee members that any kind of change to the Department of Ed or things like that it takes congressional approval. So we're looking at, time here, and we would have time to bring in that consideration at the appropriate time as the process is taking place at the federal level with Congress, with the president, those types of things too. So there will be second and third level effects on whatever decisions are made, even internally at the Department of Ed by the new Secretary of Education, right? We will update those. So the short answer is yes, there will be likely be effects, but we won't know those for quite some time. So my recommendation is that we continue to develop this, but also stay tuned into what's happening with Department of Ed along the lines of what committee member Kelly has expressed. So does that help, sir? Or did I confuse it more? Sorry.
No, I think that's a wise answer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Member Chair Hymas.
Hey, thank you. I have a potential motion. I don't know if we're ready, if there's still questions. So I'll defer if there's still questions, but I can tell you the direction. What would you like, Chair? How do I not interrupt your flow?
Yeah, go ahead. I just want to make sure that we've wrapped our head around what we are seeking is, at least what we have talked about in the past, is looking at a waiver of some of the reporting requirements federally, which will then in turn also reduce our state requirements. So go ahead, Chair Hymas.
Well, I'm leaning towards, and I'm not going to put a motion out there yet in case we have other questions. Well, I will put a motion, then we can just vote it down. How's that? Easy peasy. I'm going to move that we continue the federal school improvement and support schools in need. And if I could, Chair, speak to that.
Go ahead.
With all that's going on, I don't know if requesting a waiver is going to do anything. We're wondering what's going to happen with the Department of Ed in the federal level right now anyway. So I wondered, I don't want to waste staff time. I don't want to waste board time. I don't want to waste anybody's time outside of that. And so I wonder if putting the work into request a waiver and then in a few weeks or a month or so, it's a moot point is, you know what I mean? I wonder, I'm taking the sit back and see approach. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's why it's a motion and we have 5 of us here to vote, but that's the direction that I would head. And that's my motion.
Okay, thank you. Discussion to the motion. Member Booth?
I would be very much supportive of a motion to continue federal school improvement and support the schools in need, and not spending a lot of time right now seeking a waiver on something that is a changing landscape. As soon as we have a little bit more information, a few weeks down the road, it probably won't be very many weeks. Things seem to be moving quickly in Washington, much to the chagrin of many voices, but I think we're going to know a lot more soon. So let's go ahead and continue, not rock the boat too much, wait and see quickly, as Matt is saying, if we need to make some adjustments next month or the month after that. But certainly we don't want to lose sight of reducing the burden on the LEAs. And that's something that is going to be on probably every agenda for the next how many years that any of us is serving. Let's keep on that. Let's not lose sight of it. Let's move when we can move. But I would recommend with Matt that we continue federal school improvement and support schools in need and wait a few days and see what we hear on the news.
Thank you. Member Kelly?
Yeah, Chair, what Chair Hymas expressed, I think was the reason for my question. I think I wouldn't want to waste staff time, staff resources, seeking a waiver and to find out a couple of months down the road that it's not even a possibility. So.
Cindy, you went quiet. I don't know if you muted or.
Yeah, thank you. Director Wibke, how much staff time does it take to work on a federal waiver?
I honestly don't know. Is there anyone maybe from the superintendency that could share? Sarah, thank you.
Sarah Young, thank you. Which, oh no, wrong Sarah. Which, yeah, no, she's the right one. Okay, I want to say chief of staff, but that's not right. It's interim. It's interim, someone really important, deputy. Tell us your title, will you please, Sarah?
Of course. Thank you. So Sarah Young, Interim Assistant Superintendent of Student Support. In my previous role as our Chief of Staff, I've had the opportunity to work on 2 different waiver requests over time. In terms of that, it is one in terms of hours that is not necessarily a staff hours component. It's more a process hours component. It does require us as an agency to draft the waiver request. That does include legal review, just making sure that we can cite the appropriate codes. Then we put it out to public comment. The staff do spend time making sure that we publicize that comment appropriately. We like to hear from as many community members as possible. We then take that information, synthesize it, bring it back to the board to see if there are any adjustments that you'd like to make to the waiver at that time. And then once we've completed that step, we then pursue a conversation with the governor, usually through the governor's education advisor, to be able to ask for their signature and support of the waiver request. Once it's submitted, it's in the hands of the U.S. Department of Education. We've seen their responses take anywhere from 3 months to almost a year to be able to hear back on a process. So hopefully that's helpful.
So members, I do think that's helpful, and I think we can weigh that information. And if people want to make a change, they'll have board meeting to do it. So we do, for right now, have a motion on the floor. And the motion is that the committee directs staff to continue federal school improvement and support schools in need. Members, please vote. That motion passes with member Kelly opposed. And I have lost member Bach. Oh, with member Kelly opposed. Thank you. Let's move on to 3.4 federal school. Oh no, we just did that. So now we're on to our information items, and we have 3.5 UTREX introduction and update from our data governance specialist, Melissa Preziosi. Am I saying it right?
You did.
Will you say it for us so we know, we hear it from you?
Yeah, Melissa Preziosi, data governance specialist under the student data privacy section at USBE. Yeah, so our item today is UTREX introduction and update. So Director Jared Felt was actually going to do a little UTREX introduction for us before I presented a short slide deck.
Chair Davis, is that okay?
Great, thank you, Director Felt.
All right, thank you. As Melissa said, so UTREX, for those that don't know, is our system that we currently use to capture student data from the SIS systems and the LEAs. With that, so UTREX stands for Utah E-Transcript and Record Exchange. That will be transitioning or being subsumed into USIMS here in the next several months. But as of right now, that's the system that we use. We do have a Utrecht specification guide that's posted on the website. That guide shows what data elements that we collect. And it's available to the public. Melissa's going to speak to some of the changes to those data elements that we collect and the process we go through for doing that. So with that, I will turn it over to Melissa. And Melissa, if I missed anything that you wanted me to touch on, let me know.
I think that was great. Thank you so much, Director Felt. Yeah, in terms of the slides, Cami, would you like to show, they're in backup. I don't know if you just wanted to display them or if you wanted me to share my screen. Either way works for me. Yeah, it looks like they'll be large enough. All right, so yeah, I have a short slide deck today, as Director Felt said. I'm really here just to present on the updates from our last editing period of the Utrecht specification document. So I already gave my title. My name is Melissa Preziosi. I am the data governance specialist at USBE. I also would like to thank Tammy Walker, our senior business data analyst in our child nutrition programs section, because she's here as well to support this presentation as well. So I want to thank her, first of all, too. And Director's Felt introduction as well. All right, so I'm here. I'll start with a background, just piggybacking off of what Director Felt said, and then I'll go through each change. There's essentially 5 of them, and then I just have a summary slide. So next slide, please. All right, so background, next slide, please. Yes, so Director Felt mentioned we're talking about the Utrecht specifications document today. So what this document is, it is literally a Word document that is then saved as a PDF, and it is very large. It essentially goes through each data element that we collect daily from LEAs, and it displays what those are. It goes through the different valid values for each of those collections. It explains what they are and gives a lot of background and helpful information for LEAs about each data element. So this document is quite important for our LEAs and the technical staff at LEAs that help coordinate those collections with USBE. And the document is updated twice a year, once in July and once in December. So the last update we had was just this past December, and that's what I'm presenting on today. Editing periods are around 2 weeks long. Sometimes they go a little longer. And the document is ultimately published on our USBE website for the LEAs to reference as a PDF. So that's just a really quick background and some context of what the document is in terms of the process of how do these changes come to be, who's making the determinations. We do have a process in place for that. So if subject matter experts or data stewards across the agency recognize there's a need for a new data element, or often we have legislation that may require the collection of a new data element, we do have a proposal form that we have them fill out, and myself and Director Chalice kind of help those staff members through the process of getting that proposal looked at by our data governors committee and then approval from superintendency. So that's kind of how the process looks. And from there, we can work with our IT staff to get it technically added and get that technical development in motion. So that is the background. Next slide, please. I think we just go straight into the detail of the changes. All right, so we have 5 total changes I'm going to be reviewing today. So I have numbered them in the lower left corner. Our largest change this last editing period was around new fields for our Summer Electronic Benefits Transfer, or SEBT program. For those who may not be familiar, this program provides food dollars to low-income families with school-age kids over the summer months. So this was a relatively new program, so we needed to add some fields to collect several data elements that would allow us to provide that program to students and kids over the summer months. So next slide, please. So these are the three new data elements or points of collection that are going to be added to the Utrecht's collection. If you do happen to be looking at the backup version of these slides from the last time when we didn't get to this presentation last time, this particular slide might look a little different. because we were still in process of determining which data elements we were going to add, but it came down to these three. These are the final three that we're going to add. If you do have questions around these, I would defer to specialist Tammy Walker for those. But yeah, these are the three new data elements we're going to be adding related to SCBT. Next slide, please. So the second change I have to report on here is recommendations from the Office of Management and Budget. So they have made several recommendations around the maintaining, collecting, and presenting of federal data on race and ethnicity. So this slide has a really quick summary of what those recommendations are. I do apologize because I realized the link in this slide is no longer functional. I do have a Dear Colleague letter related to this change that I can share with this group if we're interested in that. Basically has all the information that that link originally had. So if we're interested in that, I can work with Cami on getting that to this group. But this change is something we will be implementing. Director Aaron Bruff would have the most information if we have questions on it. He couldn't be with us today, but I would defer to him if we had questions on this beyond the Dear Colleague letter, if those weren't answered in there. Next slide, please. Thank you. So change number 3. So I have to give a little background for the next 2 changes around validations in UTREX. So I'm going to explain what a validation is in UTREX essentially. So validations are just something we use to ensure that we have high quality data or that we have data present at all in the fields that need to have data present. So you can really think of these very similar to if you were filling out an electronic form and you needed to put your email in, that form would not accept it unless it was in the format of an email with an @ symbol, or it's looking for a date and it needs to be in the format of a date and it wouldn't accept anything else. That's very similar to the validations within UTREX. It's just making sure we're getting the data that we need in the format that we need, or that there's something in a field that we expect something to be in. So in this particular change, we had a validation that was actually functionally already in play in UTREX, but it just was not listed in the document. So we remedied that and we've added that into the document so that information is documented properly. In this case, it was around biliteracy language field for applicable students. And that was all we did for this change. Pretty simple. Next slide, please. So the next change, number 4, similarly related to a validation. And now I'm going to explain a little bit about different types of validations we have. So we have warnings and we have fatal errors when it comes to validations. And just to explain what that means and the differences between those, a warning would be kind of, as it suggests, it's kind of like a little warning message. It wouldn't really change or interfere with the collection of the data in any way. It's more just a heads up to the LEA saying, hey, something is a little wrong here. We'll still accept it. Us being USBE, we'll accept it, but we want you to know that something seems off and you should take a look at this. Versus a fatal error, that is the case where something is really wrong or we just can't accept the data. So if something has a fatal error placed on it, USBE would not accept it, and it would give a message explaining what was wrong and giving a remedy of the suggested way to fix that so we could accept it. So that's the difference between a warning and a fatal error. And then in the next slide, I'll explain why that's relevant here. So this 4th change actually is just changing a validation that was previously a warning, and we're now making it a fatal error. These fields were related to address and district of residence. So these were changed quite recently, and we gave quite a bit of a heads up to LEAs. We communicate with LEAs in several different ways, letting them know that this change was happening, and we continue to support them if we see that they're getting, having issues with it. We're just supporting through that as well. So, but overall, I think it's gone really well. Even the switch has happened. I haven't heard any huge concerns about the change. So now that it has happened. So been pleasantly surprised by that. All right, so, and then the last change I have is number 5. Next slide, please. So this is kind of a clump of different changes, but they're just really small. So I called this miscellaneous housekeeping. We had a name change for one of the universities in Utah. We had several links that needed to be updated to board rule or our website. And there's pretty much always just contact information changes as people change positions or we have turnover and things like that. So I believe that was the bulk of my presentation. I have a summary of the changes on the last slide. That really just is everything we went through, just all in one slide for you guys. And then I have my last slide just saying thank you for your time. And thank you for those who are joining us in support of this presentation today. And always a pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. I had someone just remind me recently what a huge undertaking this is. I mean, we basically for ADM, average daily membership, I mean, we count every day which student is in which school, who moved where, and where they are, because all of the funding hinges on this. And there's just a lot, and we appreciate all that you do. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. We have a question by member Vice Chair Kelly.
Thank you for the presentation. I just want to know how to pronounce that last name.
Will you say it again, Melissa?
Melissa Preziosi.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, let's go to our next information, minimum school program automation. And it looks like we're going to have Brett Baker, Dale Frost, and Katrina Cole.
Good morning, Chair. Dale Frost, Minimum School Program Administrator. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Let me see if I can share my presentation. All right. Just 1 second. All right. Let me put that in presentation mode. Okay, so I'm going to be presenting today along with Brett Baker, my MSP analyst, and then Katrina Cole, who's with the development team. All right. Sorry. How do I? All right. I wanted to share and have my notes, but it's showing up on both of my screens. So I'll just ad lib it. So what is the minimum school program? I think one of the important things for you all as finance committee members to understand and know is kind of the fundamentals about the minimum school program. This is the bulk of the funding that goes to school districts and charter schools. It's almost $8 billion. It's not a small chunk of change. The minimum school program is split into 3 line items called the basic school program, the related to basic school program, and voted and board local levy programs. I was going to explain just a little bit about each of these. So for the basic school program, this is made up of 15 programs. They're mostly formulas based on student characteristics. We were just talking about the data and all that goes into making sure that data is correct. That data drives almost all these formulas. So when you hear the term WPU, weighted pupil unit, that means a program within the basic school program. All the WPUs are in that $4.3 billion. So examples are the kindergarten and grades 1 through 12 programs, the necessarily exist in small schools program, a whole series of special education programs, the at-risk add-on. Brett and I, we directly administer all but one of those 15 programs. So we do all the calculations, we update all of the budgets, we answer all of the questions that LEAs may have. So the next section, that $1.4 billion, these are the related to basic programs. Oh, sorry, one other thing I wanted to say about the basic school program. So 82% of that $4.3 billion is funded through state funds, either restricted funds or uniform school fund or the income tax fund. But primarily it's the uniform school fund, I think almost exclusively in this case. The 18%, those are the required property taxes that districts levy through the basic rate in order to participate in the minimum school program. So, and I'm happy to answer the questions. I may not be able to see you, so just let me know if you have a question. So the 1.4 billion for related to basic, these are the categorical programs that go across the state. Some very important programs. The MSP team directly administers 7 of these 21 programs. The other programs, so we administer things like educator salary adjustment, teacher supplies and materials, charter school local replacement, those kind of things. Examples of programs within this that are administered by other USBE staff are things like People Transportation, Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Learning Program, and many others. But we also support folks who are doing these calculations. We're kind of the spreadsheet geeks, and we love to help folks with spreadsheets. And then the last part, voted and board local levy program. This is the property tax state guarantee program. Only 24% of this $1.2 billion is funded through state funds. The rest are the local levies that apply to this program. So the board local levies and the voted local levies that districts levy on property taxpayers, and the MSP team administers this as well. So when we talk about the minimum school program automated, we're talking about the system that we're building to help us with this work. So what is the role of the MSP team? So, you know, imagine the legislature. So this last year, they allocated almost $170 million in kindergarten funding. Well, how much goes to Alpine School District? That's the question that we answer. And that's based on, you know, statute and rule on how those things are calculated. So we have to take data such as, well, what percentage of your students are full day kindergarten? What percentage are half day kindergarten? What was your average daily membership from the year before? What were your October 1 counts and such? So that's kind of the basic bread and butter of our job. We do these reports in 3 main tranches, 3 main updates. So after the legislative session, we come out with what are called the legislative estimates. And so we're really busy through session and after session. These are the numbers on which LEAs base their budgets. But a lot of those are based on projections. We don't know how many students are going to be in every LEA next October. We don't even have current year ADM because the school year is not done. So we have to base those on projections. And we have a bunch of methodologies to do that in the mid-year updates. And we presented a couple times on mid-year updates. That's when we true up to actual data, actual prior year ADM, actual October 1 counts. The main thing we do with the final estimates is we true up allocations based on actual property tax collections. So that's the last piece of the puzzle that will happen this April and May. So how do we accomplish these tasks? Our process and the process the MSP team has used for decades now is essentially to have a series of spreadsheets that calculate all of this by program. And then these are collapsed into reports that are provided to LEAs. So this is an example, this picture here, these are just the spreadsheets that we had to create for the mid-year updates. And they relate to programs in the basic school program, as well as related to basic, as well as voted and board. Oops, I went backwards instead of front. So every year, the Office of the State Auditor audits, does a selective audit of the MSP, and they choose programs and LEAs to audit. This last year, they had this finding that they want us to pay particular emphasis in improving our allocation processes towards eliminating spreadsheet formula errors and using accurate input data. And I absolutely agreed with this. We as an agency agreed, and we talked to them about what we are doing. We've implemented a lot of standardized data tables and more rigorous reviews, but we're also rolling out what's called MSPA, the automated system that we're going to talk to today, that will further help us to eliminate any errors in downloading data and calculating the MSP. Okay, so what is MSPA? So MSPA is an online system that we are building to essentially do these calculations, to pull in all the data that we need, in some cases to upload the data we need, and to calculate this. Right now, it is in development. Eventually, we hope that MSPA will become, on the left-hand side right now, most of our work is through spreadsheets. Quality assurance is human-based and can be error-prone. Where we want to go is that the MSPA calculates the calculations. We're not going to get rid of spreadsheets. Probably I would argue the best check on the accuracy of our calculations is that folks in the field can calculate their own allocations and recreate our work. So we're still going to have spreadsheets, but we want that to be a Q&A on MSPA, not the other way around. Right now, as we're building MSPA, it's really a Q&A on our spreadsheets. And so I'll hand this over to Brett, who's going to go through a few examples and what we've been doing lately on MSPA.
Thanks, Dale. Go ahead, Brett.
Are you there, Brett?
Basically, this isn't even the full table that we use. This is part of the table for the district specifically.
Brett, I'm having a little hard time hearing you. I don't know if others are.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Can others hear you? Getting some thumbs up.
All right. So to calculate the K-12 program, which is one of our two most complicated calculations, there are 35 steps in this calculation for districts and 42 districts, 51 steps for charters because of their breakout with 1 through 6 and then 7, 8, and then 9, 12. But there's 51 steps for charters and 116 charters, leaving us with spreadsheets that have over 7,400 cell references, which introduces a lot of space for human error, like Dale was talking about. And so that's part of the reason that we want MSPA to get fully functioning. There's been times when a single cell has been off because of a typo, or there's been a column that was changed in one spreadsheet that then affected another spreadsheet on accident. So we want to be able to move away from that and more towards the automated system and use the spreadsheets kind of as a QA, like Dale was saying. Next slide. All right. So an example of the K-12 program calculations here. First, we have here the data sources that we use.
Can I ask you a quick question, Brett, before you?
Yeah.
Just because it's about the last slide. When you're saying steps, you mean steps of calculation to get to the final number, not step lane changes and such, because of all the differentiated district and charter salaries, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
You.
All right, so one of the benefits of MSPA is it pulls in most of the data for us, and then we get to look at it, compare it to what data and statistics gives us, and then approve it, so that we're then more aware of what the data inputs are, how accurate they are, and what we can expect going forward. Next slide. And then I think really where the benefit comes in is that instead of having those 7,400 different cells with references there, we can do in just one step here for all of the districts or all of the charters, get all the results for example, their FDK percent for that fiscal year, with just one step here in MSPA, so that there's less room for human error. Next slide. And then once we've done those calculations in MSPA, this table on the left shows you kind of what it looks like with an example for Alpine School District. It gives us the results that we can then kind of run spot checks on, but it also at the same time shows us the calculation, the formula that was used to get there, so that we can then more easily compare that and see if it's off, why it's off, and then go in and fix that. And then also we can export that into a spreadsheet so that we can do more thorough and complete comparisons to the spreadsheets that we've already created. Typically what we'll start out with is comparing the WPUs and the dollars. And if those are lining up, then we're pretty happy with it. If there are some issues there, then we can go back through and identify the exact step that the issues are occurring at, so that we can then diagnose whether it's a problem with our spreadsheets or with MSPA. Next slide. All right. So just a review to the reasons that we need MSPA. It increases our efficiency and confidence with our error checking. Because we have these two systems, instead of us just looking through manually at the Excel spreadsheets, oh yeah, that cell looks good. We can compare the two systems. It also helps us to address issues with human error. Like I said earlier, there's some accidental changes to spreadsheets sometimes, and then those can go unnoticed until an LEA says, hey, this looks off, and then we have to fix it. We can fix those before sending them out. And then it also helps us address concerns with USB-E staff turnover. So when anyone on the MSP team leaves and a new person comes in, or if Dale and I were to, heaven forbid, both leave at the same time, there would be automated backup so that there's just a smoother transition there. Next slide. And then just some recent developments. Over the past several months, we've been able to get to where we have at least one of us full-time on the MSPA calculations, which has been a real benefit getting us closer to done on things. All of the system data has been brought up to date. When I first came on, system data was out of date by like 2.5 years. So I had to spend a lot of time getting that updated, making sure it was accurate, so that we can move forward getting calculations done properly. There's been new requirements addressed. Like when I came on, things were a few years out of date, so there were new requirements from the legislature. But then also with me digging into the calculations, finding requirements that the system was lacking so that we could make a certain calculation. We did find along in that process that Excel and MSPA, their calculation engines, the way they were doing math had some differences that were causing some issues. We found that as long as we round out Excel and MSPA to 15 decimal places, that gets mitigated. And then we've also been able to have frequent system updates and refinements that make our calculations more accurate and also just makes the whole system run smoother. And yeah, I'll turn it back over to Dale.
So you might be asking yourself, how long have we been working on this? And that's kind of a tricky question to answer. So the initial phase of this work happened before I got here. two MSP administrators before me. And I'll kind of go through the history of this, but I wanted to show you kind of one of the reasons why it's taking us so long to even have the capacity to do this. This is how it often feels as an MSP staffer, that we are treading water while we're trying to do complex calculations and just trying to keep our heads above water. Luckily, we're to a place now, and I've only had an analyst for a little over 2 years, 2.5 years, and Brett has been here for 2 years. Is that right, Brett? Yeah. So Brett has been a huge help on actually making progress on this. So, technically MSP work started in 2018 under Jamie Barrett, who was the MSP administrator. She left, and we hired Jacob Houtrow. Jake spent a good portion of his time just getting, keeping the trains running on time. I actually was hired as the fiscal analyst at the same time as Jake. And Jake wasn't able to get to do much on the MSPA front, which is why we fell so far behind. And even when I came on as MSP administrator, I dealt with the same issues that Jake was, just trying to, learn. It is drinking from a fire hose. Learn all the calculations and how to do them accurately and on time. And so very quickly I advocated for, and Scott and Deborah and Sam were kind enough to find the funding to have an MSP analyst. We hired an analyst who was great, but he quickly got hired elsewhere. And so, we've had Brett since 2023. And as Brett was saying, we've had for the last 1.5 years, we've had a much more time and ability to focus on MSPA. And so even though we've been working on this for years, really from the MSP team standpoint, we have provided the capacity needed to make real progress only really for the last 1.5 years. And so this is a picture of all the different program calculations across all the different updates. MY means mid-year updates. FE means final estimates. LE means the legislative estimates. We started, Brett actually started with the legislative estimates, but he was dealing with a lot of those calculation engine issues. And then we had him transition to the mid-year updates as we were doing those. And really in the last couple of months, we've made a lot of progress. And I wanted you to see, this was the slide of completed calculations as of the 28th. And I've been lucky enough to be able to work almost full time on MSPA, while Brett is helping Sam and Nestor Rodriguez, our economist, manage fiscal notes. And this is the first time since I've been here at USBE that I haven't been as involved with the legislative session. I'm still answering fiscal notes here and there and doing things, but really trying to focus on MSPA. So just in the last little over a week, this is how much we were able to finish, another 13 programs. And so as I'm going through each of these programs, when I have little data tweaks that we need changed, little things, I'm noting that, and I have a long list for the developers. The longest piece of this, and the developers have been absolutely great. They have been working with us through all of this, and now I'm throwing all this stuff at them much faster than they can do, and they're doing their very best to get these changes done. But I'm trying to move on with my calculations to see what data development we need so that we can have everything done by the end of the year. That is the goal. And then we can move to maintenance mode. And so where are we going? Again, MSPA will be our primary source of truth for the MSP calculations. We'll still do spreadsheets. They'll operate as a QA for MSPA. Let me just give you an example of one of the benefits of MSPA just right now. So 2 days ago, I was working on the K-12 legislative estimate calculations, and everything was lining up except for two charters, the two brand new charters that are going to be opening up. And in my data table, I had accidentally switched the LEIDs between the two charters. That kind of MSPA showed that discrepancy and said, hey, this much needs to be there and this much needs to be there. And I was able to correct my data table. Those are kind of things that are hard to see if you're just looking at a large, database of data and those sort of things. So I'm grateful for what we've been able to do so far. Eventually, once we have everything up to date, we'll be able to have public dashboards. LEA folks will be able to see their own calculations, download aggregated data, no personally identifiable data. This is LEA level data. But then again, we want them to be able to calculate all these things on their own so that they know that they're getting the right funding amounts by program. So here's the MSPA team. Over in IT, our developers, Katrina Cole is the project manager, and we have two software engineers who are excellent, Hema and Jaya, who are working with us on this. And then you've met Brett and I. And so I also wanted to give an opportunity for the development team to talk about MSPA from their perspective. So I'll hand this over to Katrina.
Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Katrina. Thank you.
I'm Katrina Cole, and like Dell mentioned, I'm the project manager over MSPA, along with School Land Trust and IT operations. So I have to say MSPA is probably one of my favorite projects to work on, just because I love working with the numbers. So Dell pretty much and Brett both have covered, where we've been, and the issues that the teams have faced. Not only did they face challenges with turnover and lack of dedicated resources, but the MSPA development side has also too. I just joined the team it would be about almost 3 years ago, for another PM that had left. During that time, what we found is that there were just a lot of unknown requirements. We weren't receiving requirements. The system wasn't being used. And so we focused on more maintenance, tech debt, things like that to get the system up to speed as far as like updates and things like that. Next slide. Now we are at a much better place as far as this goes. Presently, improved our collaboration between the teams. We meet on a very regular basis. If we need to have chats about any kind of things that they're dealing with, they pop it in, and we usually jump on a call with them or answer their questions as quickly as we can as a team. We are seeing obviously now a steady influx of requirements coming in, and they vary each week in complexity. So some things we're able to really push out fast for them so that they can continue on with those calculations, or it might take us a week or two, but it allows us to just keep moving forward. And then our developers, like I just said, are pushing out new code continuously for the team. And so Brett is a little ahead of us, obviously, because as he's working, or Dell is, as he's working through things, because they've just, they're finding things as we go that just weren't there before, and because the system wasn't being used. And so now we're being able to get down to those nitty-gritty details and make this system the best it possibly can be for USBE and for Dell's team. Next slide. And then where we want to be, we want the ability to be able to share the data with the auditors. We want MSPA to be the source of truth for quality checks. And we're excited to share the access to the LEAs so that they can see their own data. We truly believe through this process, once we get to the end of the year, the end of the school year, summertime, we as a team will be in a great position to be basically in a maintenance mode at that point. And then from there, we will then build out the access to the LEAs so that they can start seeing their data. So by the end of this year, we do have, those are the things that we have planned out.
So Chair, that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions. Before we do, I just wanted to say, I've noticed even in the beginning, just in the last couple months, that there have been benefits outside of the MSP team and across other systems. We were just working on, there was an update that the charter board, they have their UCAP system, which is their charter enrollment projection system. They had a few updates that they needed to make for new charters that didn't happen, and MSPA caught it because we didn't download certain things. So MSPA talks to Cactus and talks to Utrex, as we were talking to, and I think there will be benefits across multiple systems as we finish this work. And I'm looking forward to being in more maintenance mode. So this can just be a value add to us. And then the only changes we'll need to make on a developer perspective will be things when a rule gets changed or the legislature changes a funding formula. So with that, happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny to see your chart of all the people that have been in this position, because I have been here with all of those people. And this is massive. Like, I don't think people understand the complexity and sometimes ambiguity in code, and that so many details in code, and then the complication of the calculations. It's a huge project, but audits don't come with fiscal notes. How do we pay for MSPA, the automation? Is that coming out of board funds? Where's that coming from?
Maybe I can defer to Deborah and or Scott on that, or sorry, Deputy Superintendent Jones.
He is working with another member out in the hall, so maybe we could ask. Well, maybe we'll go to Vice Chair Kelly's question right now, and maybe our Director Jacobson could see if she could figure that out. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for your presentation. This is stuff I do geek out on a little bit, and so I don't know if you noticed how close my face was to my screen trying to geek out on numbers, but how much of this is currently the spreadsheets, MSR? How much of it is currently available to the public? Is this readily available to all members of the public or school board members? Tell me what is available to who.
Chair, may I answer that question?
Yes.
So board member or Vice Chair Kelly, excuse me. Glad that you're geeking out on the numbers. It's always fun to have fellow number geeks. So the spreadsheets right now, we provide and to the entire field. So we have a business officials list for both charter schools and districts, and we send those out. Right now, we don't have LEA, even though we have the functionality. We're not giving access to the system for LEA folks yet. The main reason why is we're still working with it and might cause more confusion than it's worth. Let's say we're still working on a formula and they go in there and say, hey, why are you saying my K-12 funding is this, but MSPA says that? So we're trying to get everything lined up, and that's why we're working really hard to get everything up to date and ready. But then we want to provide that access, get all of these updates. We talked about the different MSP reports, all of them accurate. And so then LEA folks can go both back in time and see the specifics on calculations, or in real time, their current budgets, and see the nitty gritty of all those calculations. So right now we aren't providing LEA access, and that's not because we're trying to hide anything. We just want to have all of our ducks in a row before we provide that.
Is this syncing up at all with what Auditor Dool did with the transparency part of what he was doing with school funds?
Chair, may I answer that question?
Yes.
So the transparency work, well, what I would say is that this is a kind of a different picture of the finance formula. If you think about it, we're kind of the income end to schools, and then they report their expenditures, and that's what is reported in transparency. And so right now we have a lot more because publicly available, well, we provide all of the allocations and the spreadsheets, but what we don't have is a system that shows the income side. If you're getting $1 million for this program, you'd have to drill into the spreadsheet, and we have to kind of manually answer those questions. So we do pull in AFR data, and we do have some connections to our annual financial report at times, but we don't directly link to transparency because that's the expenditure end, not the income end, if that helps.
Yeah. Super.
So,
Thank you.
so they would line up on the expenditure side, I guess I would say, on the income side, on the revenue side for LEAs, but not on the expenditure side. We don't, on the MSP, we have a whole school finance team that deals with the expenditure reporting data and all those kind of things.
Great. Thank you. And Katrina, I do know how to pronounce your last name, so.
It's a simple one, right?
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
And Chair, we can get the information to you on the finances and how this project is being funded.
You're muted, Chair.
Thank you. You can just tell me offline. I may be the only one that's interested, but whenever we get that, thank you. I appreciate that presentation. It was wonderful. And Deborah Jacobson, are you going to be doing the recognition of progress, achievements, and improvements?
I guess I am if Scott's stepped out.
Well, we can go to program monthly report or USIMS.
It's okay. We can continue.
Okay.
I just know how much he likes to embarrass Sumac. So is she on here? He's missing out on his opportunity. So
Oh, I hear someone coughing. That might be him. It sounds got his cough.
Oh, well, maybe he'll want to do it instead.
I recognized your cough from like 2 rooms away. Here, it's got program recognition.
Oh,
Do you want to do it or do you want Deborah to do it?
Deborah, do it.
Deborah.
Oh, I thought you would want to take the opportunity to embarrass Sue.
He wants to embarrass Sue.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I do want to embarrass Sue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Your video is on. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know where we are though.
So indirect cost pool, right, Deborah?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I mixed up the programs. Okay. Madam Chair, members of the committee, we have to go through quite a rigorous process with the Department of Education to set what's called our indirect cost rates. They're percentages of what we can directly or indirectly charge particular grants. I won't get into the details of that. What you see in front of you is a result of a individual whose name is Sue Mack, who is just a phenomenal accountant, phenomenal with numbers, really puts the interest of the board, of our capabilities along the lines of what's called the indirect cost pool. So I want to recognize her for her genuine efforts in support of the board, the fiduciary responsibility that we have to the public to arrive at the indirect cost rates that you see here. So I sign this agreement with the federal government that we can charge that. So at this time, Madam Chair, if at your direction, if you'll recognize Sue Mack can explain a little bit more about what the difference is between the unrestricted rate and the restricted rate, just so I can make her speak and But in the interest of making sure that we're all clear on what the difference is between the unrestricted and restricted rate you see in front of you. So Sue, will you please, Madam Chair, recognize?
Yes, Sue Mack, thank you for all you do. You got the microphone.
Oh, Assistant Finance Director Sue Mack. So as the restricted rate is what we negotiate with restricted based on the federal guidelines. They have certain requirements that certain contracts, you can't only, each contract can only allow for the first $50,000 or something like that. It's just like superintendents is needs to be excluded out. There's a lot of exclusion we are required to exclude in the calculation. So usually the restricted rate is lower than the unrestricted rates. So most of the federal programs we charge on the restricted rate as Superintendent Jones mentioned, and the state program that is charged on unrestricted rate.
Thank you, Sue. So again, this is twofold, right? Is to ensure that you as the board through the finance committee are informed that we have the rate set, and then also to provide recognition of Sue Mack and her brilliance surrounding getting to or working with the federal government to get to what amount to respectable rates, if you will, for us to charge and sustain our operations in the interest of kids, both federal and state money wise. So that concludes this recognition piece, Madam Chair, subject to any questions or concerns.
He needs to run to another important meeting with legislators. So we think we have got Deputy Superintendent Jones in. He is the one person going to be in 5 different places. But Sue Mack, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for all the good work you do for USBE.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Deborah Jacobson, were we going to have any other recognition of progress, achievements, or improvements today? I also have Director Yuri listed here. Did you have anything else?
Yes, well, this is the next one. And so if we can recognize Sam, we want to take the opportunity to recognize some of our LEAs.
Oh, the LEAs, great.
Yeah, in backups, you have the list of these LEAs that have been recognized by 2 different organizations for excellence in their fiscal year 24 reporting, their financial reporting. We sometimes call it their ACFR and their annual comprehensive financial report. These are all available on their websites. They're also available on the state auditor's website. So for the Association of School Business Officials, that is Alpine, Beaver, Canyons, Emory, Granite, Salt Lake, and Washington school districts. And for the Government Finance Officers Association, which some of us here at USBE are members of. I'm not sure if you all have ever experienced the joy of going to a conference with 4,000 or 5,000 other government accountants. I'm not sure there's a bigger gathering of nerds anywhere on the planet, but it's great, and we learned great things that we can take back. But for fiscal year 24, for their excellence in financial reporting, as well, Alpine, Beaver, Canyons, Davis, Emory, Granite, Jordan, Provo, and Salt Lake school districts. So just wanted to take this opportunity to commend those districts. It doesn't mean that any of our other LEAs are not excellent at their financial reporting. Every single LEA in the state does receive an external audit annually that is then reconciled to the data that they report to us through what we call UPEFs. UPEFs is public. Any user any public user can download that data. We do additionally, as we talked about earlier, there is the transparency system that LEAs report both expenditures and revenues quarterly to that system, as well as an annual transparency report on their agency's payroll. So if there are any questions about financial reporting requirements, please let us know. We're happy to send you those documents. So
That sounds great. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Congratulations to these LEAs for just being rock stars in their fields. We appreciate it, especially in this area of financial reporting. Let's go ahead and move now to Program Month Report for USIMS. And we've got Director Felt and Project Manager Katrina Brinkley.
All right, thanks, Chair. If it's okay, I'm just going to turn it right over to Katrina, if that's okay.
Katrina?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you,
You're up.
Chair. My name is Katrina Brinkley. I'm the Chief Product Owner and Program Manager for USIMS, which is the Utah Schools Information Management System. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you all can see that. Yes, getting some nods. Excellent. All right, so we'll just jump right in. I understand we've still got Utah grants right after us, so we're going to go pretty quickly through this. I believe there was a board member who's unavailable to join us for the larger overview last month. We'll give a quick one, but if you'd like to review that or ask us questions afterwards, we are more than happy to do so. So first off, USIMS was created due to a legislative bill through legislative code, my apologies, 53E-3-518. Our goal is to create an automated cloud-based system that allows our LEAs to do data collections and reporting in the cloud, allows us to automate a lot of these systems, allows us to reduce data redundancy throughout all of these systems, and allows for ideally and potentially, eventually, on-time or real-time data. My apologies, my words are escaping me today. So to do this, we have divided USIMS into 3 distinct domains. These domains are the educator, the finance, and the student domain. I have with me today my product owners for each of these domains, and they're going to give an overview of what's going on within their domains. If you ever have any questions about what the USIMS teams are working on, you can always view this roadmap. There's a link here in the documentation. And that roadmap changes as we discover new things that our users will ask us to work on, new data, new legislation that comes through. We assess all of this and ensure that the things that our teams are working on are going to drive the greatest business value for our LEA users. And as always, USIMS is currently funded through legislative funds. So you'll see here we are using the 20 USIMS legislative funds at the moment. We did recently wrap up using ESSER and ARP funds, which were COVID relief funds, and all of our breakdowns are here. And I just give a general overview of what we're spending by month, by fiscal year, so you can see and get a feel for the spend on this system, as well as what has currently happened within the 20 USIMS. I am going to pause there and Chair, are there any questions?
I'm not
Excellent.
seeing any hands.
All right. Then moving on, I'd like to please turn the time over to my product owner for the student domain, Mark Waddups, if we may, Chair.
Go ahead. Thanks, Mark.
We cannot hear you.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I got double muted there. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I'll go fairly quickly. Again, Mark Waddups, product owner for the student domain on USIMS. Katrina, if we could go forward 2 slides. These 2 slides here are kind of an overview of the value that we're providing. We continue to have those in these slides just to emphasize what we're doing there. In interest of time, I'll go fairly quickly, but feel free to ask any questions that you have. We recently completed getting the real student data for Utah Aspire Plus completed, and you know, are in the throes, so to speak, of doing student demographics as well. One update since these slides were created is We did just send out documentation to two of our SIS vendors to get preliminary feedback with one of the APIs, or that communication channel, if you will, for distributing data from one LEA to the next, or from SIS system to the next. So we're excited about that. We're in the process of also creating synthetic data sets for not just assessments, but for RISE and Utah Aspire Plus, so we can work out those kinks before we truly turn on that real student data. So while the real student data is being completed, we need to also create, you can see there under right now, a way for our SIS vendors, and particularly our LEAs, to securely authenticate and get that information. So we felt like as a team that that was a way that we could allow and empower LEAs to control the security of who gets what data, and in light of some of the recent news and data breach issues and things like that, we really wanted to make sure that we had a solid and viable solution for that, but doing so in a way that's modular, and that we're not trying to build every bell and whistle in it at the outgo. So those are probably the two or three things that I wanted to highlight here. Are there any questions you might have?
I don't see any hands. Thank you so much, Mark.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
If we may, Chair, maybe turn the time over to Dawn Moody, our product owner for the finance domain.
Yes, and considering that we did do this last month also, and we want to make sure we have to end at 12:30, we want to make sure we have time for Rebecca. Let's do these pretty quickly, and if members need to, we can go back and review also the past presentation.
Yes, thank you. Don?
Thank you, Chair Davis. So looking here at just skipping through for time's sake to slide 17, which is the current and upcoming work in the finance domain. We're continuing to coordinate with 7 external vendors that provide finance data to LEAs. We actually have 3 vendors right now that we've identified as being able to start sending their pilot LEA data using the USIMS Finance API. Link, Tyler, those are both in the slide. And then we also have got confirmation from Sage Intact that they will be scheduling their pilot release here in the next few months. We've also been working with kind of following up with what both Assistant Director Mack and what Deputy Superintendent Jones were sharing on indirect costs. There's a component of that that the LEAs need to be put on as well. Would like to thank your finance manager, John Palmer, in helping walk through those complex calculations with the USIMS team. We've actually built and shared the initial calculations with the stakeholders, and we're now in the process of building the adjustments that need to happen. Like once the actuals after the close of an LEA have been submitted, we need to do different calculations kind of after the fact to make sure that that number is accurate and can be used for grants in future fiscal years. We've actually, and that's kind of the main component that the finance team will be working on here throughout the remainder of fiscal year 25. With the slides, what we're doing right now, we've actually completed. If we could go ahead and just go to the next slide, slide 18, on our definition of done. The main component that we are focusing on right now is with the indirect cost. We are continuing, as I mentioned earlier, we're continuing to support vendors, the external vendors, with the Finance API, and so that we can automate the submission of budget and actual data annually from the LEAs. And we've actually completed that third component of enabling USB Finance to manage the accounts and the different combinations and rules that are available to LEAs. So apologize for that quick explanation. Chair Davis, do you or anyone else on the committee have any questions?
I don't see any hands. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for our last domain, if I may turn the time over to Tim Davis, our product owner for educator domain.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Davis. I'll be really quick, I promise. So Katrina, if you just want to go to the status slide. So quickly, what we're doing is we've just opened our second group of educator preparation program. So the universities that doing the university recommends. So we're including, sorry, I have to, let me get my list so I'm speaking correctly. So it's Utah State, Southern Utah University, Weber State University, and Utah Valley. So those 4 universities will be, we've just provisioned them. We're reaching out to them to get them basically set up so they can start doing those recommendations. And then the other big thing that we're just continuing to do work, we're really excited for Tuesday for our sprint review is with our assignments functionality for the LEAs to provide that, to be able to do that inside of USIMS instead of Cactus. So we've had lots of conversations with stakeholders and actual LEAs about what assignments means to them and the things that they do. And we've incorporated a lot of that feedback into providing that inside of USIMS. And we're basically iterating and developing that. And we're on a really good pace. And we got some good, exciting things to be showing. So next month, we can hopefully go into a deeper dive of what those things look like. So those 2 things are really what is the big things on our radar. If there's any questions, I'm happy to discuss offline or as needed, but I'll turn the time back over to Katrina.
Thanks, Tim.
And we'll wrap up very quickly. We do our focus working groups with each domain in specific meetings. We love to have attendance that we have board members who have requested to be in attendance. And all of you should already have the invite. If you do not, we are happy to forward that to you. We also have a functional advisory board, which is a quarterly review of everything that we're working on within USIMS. And we do invite all the vendors. So all of our SIS vendors are there, as well as our financial vendors and anyone else who has interest that is open to the public. We also have our onsite that will be happening in April through May 2nd. And that onsite is where I bring all of my developers here, local and outside of Utah. And we go visit LEAs and we go talk to them about what's going on. And we go get face-to-face time with them about anything any issues they may be having or any features that they would like to see or systems that they would like to look at. So, and that wraps it up for USIMS.
Chair Davis.
Yes.
I'm driving right now, but so I can't raise my hand, but I just wanted to on behalf of the board, express our enthusiasm and excitement that from 1 month to the next, that much more can be happening and that the impetus rolling forward is so rigorous right now, thanks to everybody on the USIMS team, the product owners, the team that works with you. We are very delighted to see the continual progress from month to month, and we're just anticipating a great future in terms of being able to get all this information easily accessible to all parties that need it. Thank you so much for this report.
Well said. And with that, thank you. And Rebecca, we've got our grants manager, Nielsen, here. I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. I trust you can see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, hold on. I'm not sure you can see you can see the Utah Grants presentation screen, yes?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. For the record, I never have my feelings hurt if I get bumped at the end of this meeting.
Thank you.
Director of Grants Administration, Rebecca Nielsen. I'm speaking on the Utah Grants update of recent development work that is taking place on that site. I wanted to give a quick overview of what is Utah Grants for any new committee members, go over a few metrics, discuss some customer service and development work, and then address any potential risks. And I will be moving very quickly through at least the first set of slides. So if you need me to pause or circle back, please just interrupt me at any point. Yeah, please. So first of all, what is Utah Grants? Utah Grants is our electronic grants management system. The primary focus being an integrated system for the USPE, which is transparent, comprehensive, standardized, and compliant, with our primary focus having been and continue to be on our compliance. We have gained leaps and bounds as far as our compliance and our grants management by utilization of the Utah Grants system. Just quickly, an overview. It's a cloud-based system that's provided by a vendor. REI is the vendor that produces Utah Grants. It's built upon a Salesforce platform, and it is highly customized for Utah. And they have another product that it's based upon, which is a government grants or gov grants product, which is being utilized by many other states. Utah's branding is Utah Grants, and we have done a lot of work to make it unique and special just for Utah to work exactly for what we need it to do. It is our cradle to grave grants management solution, from program announcement to LEA application and funding, the issuance of awards and tracking of financial aspects of the grants, as well as post-award management, including reimbursements and post-award activities such as site visits, all the way through closeout. By the numbers, we began this project. We implemented our first grant in 2018, so in fiscal year 2019. And so we are 6+ years into this project and continue to grow. We process a lot of grants through Utah Grants. This is kind of a quick breakdown of what that funding looks like. The red being the MSP, that would be anything that's handled by Dale and his group, as opposed to state grant programs, which are typically requiring an application or additional information, and federal grants. And then we also process all payments through the Utah Grants Management System, with the exception of our child nutrition program, which are utilizing a different product. Just wanting to note that this system also handles all of our MSP awards and payments, in addition to the reimbursement requests that are submitted by our LEAs and partners. All right, into the actual meat of the presentation. We wanted to discuss today customer service and development work that's taking place with REI. We have 3 levels of work that we primarily do in my team. We have some tier 1 customer service support for our LEAs and partners. We also have some tier 2 support that we work with our vendor to provide and address any technical issues that we have through a customer support team at REI. And then we also have a development group that we're working with at REI, which is separate from the customer support group, to help us support our ongoing future development efforts, which are taking place within the Utah Grants platform. We have, on the development side, several items that were completed a year ago. So back in April, we have a current contract that we are working on with REI to really beef up our efforts as far as continued support of our LEAs and minimizing risk and burden on our LEAs. So just quickly, we've gone through these slides before, so I'll quickly go through what we have done and focus primarily on what we are doing. Coming up at the beginning, or at beginning of April, end of March, we have some additional functionality that we're currently testing right now in user acceptance testing. That would include program tagging, which will allow our LEAs to primarily opt in to certain programs or types of programs, so that they're receiving less email or fewer notifications through the system, but only being able to focus on the programs which they are interested in or responsible for. That will reduce the email fatigue and help to focus efforts on what actually matters to the specific audience. We'll also have the ability to compare submissions side by side through a PDF comparison tool. We're working on a consolidated pre-application process, which is primarily focused on our federal pre-application process. So most of our federal grants will now be consolidated into a pre-application, which will include our federal assurance, which will allow us to have a substantially approvable application to our LEAs much sooner than we have had in the past. We're also working on a consolidated award workflow, making sure that we're getting all of the correct approvals within USBE for those consolidated programs, and working on improved functionality when we're transferring funds between one federal program to another where allowable. The timeline, again, we were scheduled to be released to UAT in January. That was delayed as a result of some certain risks that I'll be addressing on the next slide. But we are still planning on our full rollout after UAT for March 31st. So I believe we've been able to overcome some of the risks and timeline delays that were a result of the UAT delay, so that we can still stick with our original timeline of March 31st, beginning of April, for our full rollout. So some of the risks that we've seen are email task reminders, which has been part of the improved workflow, are not working as expected. That will improve also with our program tagging functionality, where we'll be able to opt in to specific programs. We have some framework updates that have not gone over very successfully. And REI is continuing to control the delivery of their product. We have actually put them on pause with the development so that we could focus on some of the customer service issues that we've had in the development, or excuse me, in the customer service realm of what's currently within Utah Grants, which has also caused the delay. So we could focus on what's working, what's not working within our current environment before we continue on development work. We have addressed the majority of those issues. There are very, very few remaining issues that we're working through with the customer service team, and we're back on schedule, being able to do our second round of user acceptance testing beginning today. We also have some additional concerns as far as we're starting to reach some storage limits. We've been in the system for 6.5 years. We need to start having conversations about either increasing our storage or archiving some older programs. And also with increased functionality, we expect there to be a need for an increased number of licenses. USBE pays for both internal user licenses as well as each LEA user license. So each user that uses Utah Grants comes at a fee to USBE. So we anticipate that there may be some additional costs as a result of both those two last items, the storage capacity and potential additional user license requests. Just to quickly state, we have a user development team that has been meeting twice a week. And we're now back into the testing stage of that, so it's much more frequently that we're meeting. And my contact information, and it is 12:30 on the dot. So I will turn it back over to you, Chair Davis.
You are amazing, and it's finally all coming to fruition after years. Remember sitting in the Reports and Requirements Task Force and listening to LEAs, and we're so frustrated, our districts and charters, and now we're getting, consolidated applications and consolidating so much for them. Thank you for all of your amazing work. We really appreciate you. It's been a good journey. So thank you. And thank you for ending at 12:30. And thanks everybody, staff and board members, for being flexible to change to the 10 o'clock to 12:30 time today. Much appreciated.
Behaviors.
Christina, did you have any last comments, or any board members have any last comments, or staff members?
No, I turned on my microphone and you probably got caught, Christina, but no, thank you. We're good in here, but thanks staff for your time and for your presentations.
Thank you.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks all.